Ribby Libby, no barkies. Just organise myself here. Ribby, come on. Okay. Of course, as soon as I get on live, dogs bark. Ribby, come on. Good morning, everybody. This is our rescheduled live from Sunday. Big apologies for a bit of a tech glitch on Sunday. My Wi-Fi wasn't working. Dogs are going off at barking at something. Yeah, I live out rural and my Wi-Fi was completely playing up. I tried to go live on my personal hotspot and it just didn't work. So yeah, once again, apologies for that. I've got a new Wi-Fi now. Actually, ended up upgrading my Wi-Fi, so this is pretty cool. Oh, my little Wi-Fi thing. How handy is this? I got the newer version and it's so much better, I hope. Anyway, it seems to be working really well. So I'll pop that up there. I'll just make sure I can see the comments. Oh, my phone's going to be binging off here, I think. I'll turn that on silent. Okay. Awesome. Dogs are going off in the background here. Okay, so a big welcome to all our new members of the group. Lovely to have you in here. Feel free to post anytime, share your experiences, your training progress, or any problems or issues you're having. Feel free to share anytime. As you don't know, I do a weekly Q&A in the group. It's usually Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Sundays at 9 a.m. I'm going to be moving that now to 8 a.m. So yeah, I'll let you know with that in the group anyway, because I do a little notice in beforehand. And yeah, I've got some, if you pop up into the guide section, there's some info on training, and I often post training tips and a training series coming up very soon as well. So yep, lots to look forward to. My dogs are going off. I don't know what's happening out there. Except for little Poppy. So if you don't know, I'm a doggy person for our new members, and I thought I might just share. Everyone else has run out the back and barked, but here is my little fat Poppy. Look at this. Poppy! She's a little rescue. Hey? And she loves to sit on the chair next to me. Say hello to everybody, Poppy. Hello. So everyone's barking out there. Bailey's underneath my legs. The rest are going off. Barking, aren't they? You're very quiet, Pops. Yeah. Well, you're not actually that quiet. She barks a lot at the horses. Hey, she's a little rescue, and she's... How old are you? I think she's about 12, 13. Hey? Aren't she? And she's beautiful. She loves her mummy. So here's my little Poppy. There you go. Okay, so I've got some questions to answer, and I'll go into them now, and I'll talk about, so I'll just pop back, and that. Okay, where am I? I'll just go in the group, and if you have any questions, you're coming on live, just pop them in the comments below, and I will answer them for you. Let me just make sure I get all the... Go to the settings here. Don't bark, guys. Okay, should be able to... What's happening here? Where's everybody? Just trying to get the comments. Guys, stop barking. Oh my gosh, the dogs. Comments. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Okie dokie. So let's go down to... Now, if for some reason you pop a question in the comments and I don't answer it because it hasn't come through, it should. I've got all the settings right, but Chrissy, I gave the dogs bones last night, so they're getting a bit protective over their bones. So yes, let's hope it all. The tech is always a little bit, always changing things. Okay, so let me go to the questions. So I'm just looking at my 2 questions that I've got to answer. Oh, dearie me, where am I going? Okay. All right, guys, just finding out. Here we go. Okay, so I've got a question from Kristen Moyer. I hope I've spelt your name right. Pronounced your name right, I should say. And her issue is my OTTB has a hard time being tied. When I got her, I tried to brush her and she started pulling back. I had walked up to her with a brush and she started pulling. I'm not sure what happened or how they dealt with it in the home before, but I'd really love some tips on how to correct this. So far, I've started walking up to her and walking away and walking back, but it's always back to square one the next day. Okay, and I'll just bring in 2 questions, questions because Laurie Hill Liggins as well is having a similar issue. So she said, I too am having issues with having my guy being tied to a trailer. Currently we use a tie block, however he keeps pulling really far out a bit and I go up and pull back in and he instantly pulls it back out. I'd like to be able to have him tied and know he's safe. He is 7 and hasn't raced in about 3 or 4 years, I think. Okay, so this is a common issue with, I'm just going to my other dog, Minnie. Okay. Minnie wants to sit here and say hello. I'm a dog person. If you guys are new in the group, if you've watched a lot of my lives, you know there's always dogs in the live, or usually. And this is Minnie, my other little rescue. I have 6 dogs. Did have 7, but I recently lost one. Very sad. So I have 6 dogs, all but one of them are rescue. So Minnie wanted to sit on my lap. So you stay there, Min. Okay, so, you know, tying back is really, really common with off the track thoroughbreds. And so I'm getting tongue tied here. And the reason is because they don't know how to give to pressure. Okay, so I've got 19 of my own horses and 17 of them are off the track thoroughbreds. And ones that I haven't retrained or anything, quite often they will pull back. I see it in racing. I've worked in racing for over 17 years. And they do pull back in racing as well. They're quite often put in tie-ups, but, you know, quite often I've seen horses, you know, if we've been hosing down in the hose bays, you know, they'll pull back in tie-ups. Racing is a very demanding and it's a very highly stimulating environment. They sort of, it's very highly stimulating because quite often there's a lot of adrenaline going through their system and that. So, and it's a very rush environment. So they're put under a lot of pressure. But basically going back to, they don't know how to give to pressure. And they, with riding and with basically even being handled, they're sort of leaning into pressure. They habituate to a lot of pressure. So the pulling back issue is because they aren't giving to the pressure. So for instance, if you imagine, you know, you've got your horse tied up and they're pulling back and they feel that pressure on them, instead of them giving to that pressure once they're pulling back to the length of the lead rope, they're feeling it, they continue to pull back, and they've learnt that if they continue to pull back, they will get away. So they have learnt that if they pull back, they get relief of the pressure. Well, they don't really. So if they pull back, they get to get away. So quite often this, as I said, happens in racing. But the way to fix this is to retrain your stop response in hand. So the first thing we do when retraining an off-the-track thoroughbred is go and retrain them in their basic responses of stop and go and turn and yield. In racing, as I said, they're habituated to so much pressure. So, for instance, when we're leading around in the races, so I've done a lot of strapping, you'll see the horse. I sort of handle them a little bit differently, but you're continually just trying to maintain them. You're trying to have control of them. They're not responding to light responses. They're not under stimulus control. It's basically a safety thing. They're very they've got a lot of adrenaline going through their system. And when you get them off the track, they still have that adrenaline going through their system. They still, it's like they're a little bit hyperreactive to things. Also, too, in racing, it's, when they're saddled, when they're bridled, when they're hosed down, it's not a calm, relaxing environment. It's like you've got to get things done. They may get roared at, or they may get punished if they misbehave, or if they get a little bit funny with the rug being put on. They may get a jerk on the lead rope, or a whack and stand up. So you can sort of see it creates that little bit of being on edge. I put it down to I feel like off the track thoroughbreds have a bit of well, not even going to say a bit. They sort of come out of racing, a lot of them, with PTSD, post-traumatic stress and disorder, and it really is like that for a lot of them. So I think having that, approaching them in that way, gives you a bit of a clear idea of what may be going through their head. So, for instance, I'll go back to Kristen. So she has a hard time being tied up. So when she goes to brush her, she goes to pull back. So she's showing a negative reaction to being brushed. This could be for many reasons. Quite often they don't, depending on which stable that they've come from. They often don't get brushed very often. Like I have. As I said, I've worked in racing for over 17 years, nearly going 18 years now. And some of the stables, we used to do a big grooming session. Every horse would be groomed. They've gone out for work. They come back in, they get hosed down, put in their stables, and then we would spend the next hour or so grooming each horse. Now, I'm going to say that is only 2 stables in 17 and a half years that I've worked at that have done that. I very rarely see thoroughbreds groomed. Okay, I've worked in a big city stable, and we did all the grooming there. I went up to a provincial stable and we did the grooming there. I've worked in country stables since then for years and years and years, and all the provincial ones, and not one other stable did a daily grooming session with the horses. So you can see that they actually don't get groomed a lot, depending on what stable they come in. So they may be a little bit aversive to being groomed. They're very sensitive to touch a lot of the time. So basically, if you're going up to your mare and she is pulling back when you go to groom her, she's got a negative association with that. So that's one thing to look at. It also can be a sign of ulcers. It can be a sign that she is associating being handled, being groomed, to discomfort or some pain. So what I do there is I don't even start grooming them. So for instance, when I bring in an off the track thoroughbred, the first thing I do is I don't actually get into some full-on grooming session. I just see how they respond to being touched, and that if they're a bit aversive to being touched, being scratched, I'll start with just some type of habituation to being touched. Quite often I'll start with scratching them around the wither. So they're pulling back because, one, they don't know how to give to pressure, and 2, they're frightened of something. Okay, so something is creating a negative association in there for them. So you've got to address it for two reasons. Horses are flight animals, so they're pulling back because they're wanting to escape from something. So that's the first thing to be aware of. Now, to fix this, okay, we need to teach them to give to pressure. And this comes to retraining in hand. So I've got some videos on it. So to start with, you train in hand in your head collar and lead rope. So for instance, we train our stop and go. So I'm getting a little bit confused with my words here. So you want to train them to give to pressure. So with your head collar and lead rope, and I'll put a link up in the group to a video I've got of this, a YouTube video where I'm retraining Tommy to stop and go. So you find quite often with Off the Track Thoroughbreds, if you check their stop and go, you'll find that if you ask them to come forward off lead pressure with the head collar, they'll be very heavy, okay, which is the same thing as if you've tied them up and they're pulling back. Okay, they're not giving to the pressure. Instead, they're pulling back enough to, they break the lead rope and then they get away. So they've learnt that if they continue to pull, the pressure releases. Okay, so what you want to retrain instead, as soon as they give to pressure in the head collar and lead rope in hand, you release. Okay, so you want them to respond to a very light pressure and where they release. So you want them to respond to giving to pressure, okay, with a light response in hand, not giving to, well, not the pressure giving to them if they continue to pull back harder and harder and harder. So I hope this makes sense. So when they're pulling back, they've learnt that the pressure gives, okay, when they pull back as hard as they can. And what we want to do is change that to as soon as they give to any pressure, okay, so if you, for instance, if you're asking your horse to walk forward in your head collar and lead rope, standing in front, as you ask for light pressure and they're not going to usually give, you ask with the lead pressure, a little bit of firmer pressure, firmer pressure, firmer pressure. As soon as they step 1 foot forward, you give, okay? And that is teaching them to give to pressure. And that actually goes back and solves the problem of them pulling back. So it's repetition. So you repeat that. So solving the problem, repeating. So solving the problem of them pulling back is training your stop response in hand by then teaching them to give to light lead rein pressure in hand. So this is done by repetition. So you'll repeat it. So I'll put the link up to the video because this is giving you a really clear example. And I actually did another video as well with Tommy of showing this again. And I've got some really good videos of a horse that's very heavy. So if you've got an off-the-track thoroughbred that has had no retraining, quite often when you ask them to step forward with lead rein pressure, they're going to be extremely heavy. Okay, so the most important thing is to give as soon as they take 1 step forward. And then you'll do, so you want to repeat that. So for example, you'll have the do 5 to 7 repetitions of standing in front of them, asking them to come forward by lead rein pressure, okay, your head collar and your lead rope. And as soon as they take 1 step forward, you release. Okay, you then repeat that again within 4 seconds. Okay, so horses learn by association and repetition. So repeat that again. So ask with light lead rein pressure, they won't respond. A little bit firmer, a little bit firmer, a little bit firmer. As soon as they respond, release. Repeat that. Ask them as stepping forward again, a little bit firmer, release. What you're going to find is when you ask them the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th repetition, they're going to respond to a lighter pressure. So they're learning that when they feel the light pressure, okay, if they don't respond, the pressure is going to get a little bit firmer. So they learn to associate your light lead rein pressure, okay, to the heavier pressure, and they learn to then step forward. So they learn to avoid the heavier pressure by stepping forward to the light pressure. So I hope that makes sense. And then this is going to go back to when you have them tied up. So then, for instance, if you've got them tied up, so for I'll go back to Laurie. So Laurie has issues with her guy being tied up to the trailer. So you've trained him to being to coming forward to light lead rein pressure in hand first. So then now when you go back and he's tied up to the trailer, the only thing is, so you've got a tie block. So with the tie block, there's actually not a lot of pressure to give because he can keep pulling it back firmer and firmer and firmer. So the tie blocks are really good because they're safe, but they're not actually giving a lot of pressure. They're not giving, he hasn't got any resistance there. So I would probably use both. I mean, it's great to have the tie block, but I would probably have two tied up there, just your normal lead rein. I use baling twine because I want to keep it safe, because you've still got a bit of resistance, but then if they get caught or stuck or they really panic, it still will break. But you'll see how once you've trained them to respond lightly to your in-hand cue of going forward, you've got them now tied up. They go to pull back and it's the same thing. They feel that pressure, and you've already taught them to give to pressure. So instead of them just thinking, so you're retraining them to give to the lighter pressure than what they previously had learned by pulling back, and the only way they got release is if they broke the lead rope. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just making sure that the comments come up here. So it's all about retraining their responses in hand to respond to light pressure. Now this goes all through with Off the Track Thoroughbreds because they've habituated to so much pressure all round. I'm just going to put my little heaty on here. I can't believe, I'm just completely going off topic here, that it is mid-summer in Australia and I'm in a thermal top. It is cold and miserable down here. I just want summer. Anyway, I'm just putting my little heaty on here because it is just a bit cool. I live down near Canberra in Australia, so it's a bit cool down here. So I hope that makes sense with how to fix the problem of your horse pulling back. Also too, there's a couple of things there. So with Kristen, so her mare has an aversion to being brushed. So the walking, so you've got two problems here, Kristen, because you've got that she's pulling back and most probably getting away. So she learnt that the only way she gets release of the pressure if she pulls back hard. And she's also learnt that whatever's worrying her that's causing her to pull back, she gets away from whatever's worrying her. So whether it's the brushing or something, and then pulling back harder and harder and harder gets her away. So it's reinforcing the behavior, and that's where we want to change that. So so you want to address your mare in two ways. First, you want to teach her to give to pressure with your in-hand training first, and then two, you want to look at what could be the cause of her being aversive to the brushing. Now, they may have, look, in her, as I said, as bizarre as it sounds with Off the Track Thoroughbreds, you think they would be groomed from head to toe. They don't often get groomed in a lot of stables. I'm in Australia. I haven't worked in any overseas stables. I don't know if the UK is any different, but in Australia, and now I will go back, I worked for Gay Waterhouse in my first stables, and we groomed every horse back then. After track work and everything, every horse was groomed and wiped down and treated and that. And then I went up and I worked in a provincial stable for a couple of years, and we did also groom back there. We actually groomed the horses, treated their legs and everything, and wiped them all down with a mixture of nice we used to put kerosene actually in it. Was it kerosene? Yeah, I used to keep flies away. And like he was a bit of an old school trainer, and we used to put a tiny little bit of kerosene in water, and it kept the flies away because I was up on the Central Coast there. And they were all groomed. Now I'm going to honestly say they're the only two stables that I have worked in. And then I rode freelance, so I did ride freelance for a lot of the time, pretty much a long time. But you know, I'm not saying that no stables groom, but I know that it's not a regular occurrence in a lot of the stables that I have worked in. So just don't expect, if you get your off the track thoroughbred, that they are really habituated to being groomed and things like that. They do get hosed down. As I said, it's a very rush environment. It's not as if they can relax and chill out, and if they get a little bit worried, they're, you know, corrected in you know, a proper retraining way. They're not. If anything, they're corrected in not a good way. They may be yelled or screamed at. You also need to be aware too of thoroughbred racehorses are on a massive high grain diet, so that also makes them they're full of energy, so they're on a high grain diet. They're in a very highly stimulating environment. Racing, they run on a lot of adrenaline. They have a lot of associations with discomfort and pain, but just even being an athlete themselves, and their body being under such a demanding pressure, they're going to have aches and pains, just generally, muscle soreness, and they're going to, quite often they have injuries that are identified or not identified, and you know, it's very hard for them. I think thoroughbred racehorses are incredible. They are amazing warriors. They are warrior horses. They really are. They enter into the industry so young. They put up with so much. And you know, the high grain, they nearly all have ulcers, like they say. I think the studies is over 90% of racehorses have ulcers, so they're experiencing pain. They're in an environment where they're stabled. Now this comes back to the brushing. Now this can be a topic in itself. So, and I'm going to continue to do a lot of videos with this, because it's such a common thing that off the track thoroughbreds are very aversive to being brushed. One, they may not be habituated to being brushed, and you know, that sort of that all over. Like off the track thoroughbreds, they're not mollycoddled, they're not they're workhorses, you know, they're not scratched, they're out to work, they come back, they're put in their stable. If they misbehave having the rug on, they're like growled at, stand up, you know, or you know, they may get a whack. I mean, I've seen, you know, things like that. So that's basically what happens, you know. And then it's like, hurry up, rug this horse, then get this horse out, we've got to saddle. If they're being saddled and they put their ears back, or they go to kick out, they're growled or smacked or hit, you know. And you can see that sort of puts them on edge. That can create a bit of fear in them. And I have seen I've seen terrible situations where only recently, hence the reason I'm not working in the stable anymore, where the horses are coming out and being saddled up and they're shaking in fear. They're actually shaking in fear. You know, and look, I'm not anti-racing because I've worked in it for nearly 18 years, but I have seen some very huge equine welfare issues in it. And then there's other stables that are fantastic, and there's some fantastic trainers, but you know, you don't know where your off the track thoroughbred has come from, and you know, to see a horse shaking in fear when they're being saddled is horrible. So just some of the things that can happen. So these behaviors that you might find frustrating, or I don't know what to do, realize that a lot of them can be fear-based. And it's like I'm very big on rehabilitation with off the track thoroughbreds, and kindness and calmness and patience. Oh, I've got a comment here, sorry. Hey Jill, what is your opinion on stretchy bum bands? I'm trying to encourage him to work from the behind. Yeah, you know, I personally haven't used those bands, so I don't know a lot about them. I do a little bit of different. So I think so. I know that is it Linda Tellington Jones. I love all her stuff. I don't know a lot about. Hi Jill, how are you? Hopefully, obviously, I have a bit of better connection today. which is good. I'm very happy with my new modem. Um, I'm not anti bum bands or anything. I know that Linda Tellington Jones and a lot of the physio type people use those. I don't use them myself. I start off. I think the best thing, depending on where your horse is at in retraining. So I know with the bum bands, and I don't know a lot about them, but I think it's to do with proprioception and bringing awareness to that part of the body. With Off The Track Thoroughbreds, and I'm not sure where you are at with your Off The Track Thoroughbred. Have you recently got him, or is he or him or her, or are you quite a way down with the retraining? I personally prefer to go right back to basics, and I've got a fantastic training coming up, and it's going to be really wonderful to see. Of Ty, who's an Off The Track Thoroughbred that I've had in for retraining, that has come so far in his 6 months, nearly 6 months now, of using his body in a healthy way. So when you're wanting to get your boy to work from behind, you want to make sure that they're in self carriage first of all, and that goes back to your in hand work. It's amazing how, going back to the equitation science principles that I work with, and going back to retraining the stop and go. So I always check with how they are in hand. He's been rehabbed after kissing spine and has all the care. Wonderful. He's 5 months into long and low and rebuilding. Okay, great. If you feel like, so I would even go back and check right back to your basic responses just to check. So it's like going back and checking of how he is to stop and go in hand just with the head collar, because it's amazing how they can be right in your rehab and everything, and still when you check them with your basic responses of stop and go, they're still heavy. So that's telling you that they're still on the forehand in some way, and they're not in self carriage. Now I'm actually bringing, and I'm doing some videos on this, my big boy Tommy that I retrained 8 years ago. I used to ride him track work. He's 16 now, and I'm bringing him back into work, and I looked at the issues of him not using his body properly. Yeah, that's fantastic. Not forcing anything. That's great. So you can look that. I'm not anti, the bum bands. As I said, I don't know enough about them, and I do think they go on proprioception. So bringing that awareness to that area. So I don't think that they are going to do any harm. I approach it from a different perspective. I would probably. I go down more the classical dressage way. As I do a lot of equitation science, so really retraining the basic responses to they're so light in hand first, and then putting that under saddle and teaching them to being a rider myself, and doing so much riding and particularly off the track thoroughbreds and riding and racing for so long, I work more of it feeling like they're standing in self carriage. So look, I think combining the bum bands with the classical dressage type of approach is fantastic. So as I said, I haven't used the bum bands. I do know someone who does use them, and I think from a physiotherapy point of view, they're good. I've actually used bands myself in many track work injuries that I've had, and I've had bands put on myself, and it brings awareness to that part of the body. And horses are very sensitive. They have their nerves, so their nerves are a lot closer to their skin than our nerves are. So I think just bringing awareness to that part of the body is not going to do any harm. As I said, I do like the classical dressage approach. So I look at Manolo Mendez and following the equitation science principles, and I'm going to go into a lot more. I've got a lot more information. I've got so much information, and it's that the equitation science has their own training shaping scale. So it is basically training self carriage, and it goes into collection by making them use their body. So it's working on their posture in a self-carriageway. He's also got, because he's been rehabbed after kissing spine, he's going to have a lot of memories and associations of pain. So I think being really 5 months, you're into the 5 months of low and rebuilding, which is fantastic. So you'll notice too that as his shape changes and he physically is aware that he can use his body in a different way without having pain, it's going to, gradually change his perception. So his memories of working in pain, because how long did he race? Was he in racing for quite a while? Because they never forget. So horses never forget. So he's always going to have that memory of using his body. Yeah, fantastic dressage approach. You've had him just over a year. Beautiful. Did he come? So you came off the track. Was he in racing? Did he race for very long? Okay, only for 8 races. Okay, so he still would have been in work for quite a while. So even though he's only raced, he's only had 8 race starts, he would have, he would have been educated under saddle. He would have, done the whole, the prep, and then, so he has experienced quite, an extensive training in racing, and he's obviously having kissing spine. He's associated pain with that, and that is really painful. So it's going to take a while. So if you've only had him for just over a year, that's only really early, and it sounds like you're doing really fantastic. I rehomed him from a rehoming centre where he was rehabbed. Fantastic, yeah. It sounds like, where are you in? Are you in Australia or UK, or whereabouts in the world are you, Jill? I'm really big, so and I'm so aware. So working in racing for so long, I just find that they're amazing. They really are amazing horses, because I would say nearly every off the track thoroughbred. Oh, Scotland, beautiful Scotland, beautiful. Yeah, look, I think you're definitely on the right path, and I would just keep going down that path. And just being really aware, and also feeling like, I'm so into being aware, like feeling his muscles. Is he soft to touch when you're looking at him? Is he sort of standing in self-carriage, or is you feel like, that's just where going back to the equitation, even though you're into your 5 months, was it 5 months down into your rehab and that, it's always just going back and checking your basic responses. I'm going to put a lot more up on that. Oh, is he? I'll have a look at that. Beautiful. How old is he? I don't know if you put there. They're just the most amazing horses. They really are. And this is why I'm so passionate about the welfare of them after racing, because they're quite misunderstood. And they put up with so much, and I just really want to make a big change for them and educate people to approach them in a way that once they're rehabbed. He's 12, beautiful. So I've actually got a 12-year-old that's just coming back into work now as well. Yeah, look, I think you're on exactly on the right path. He's been treated for his kissing spine, and I just think, yeah, but a baby, they are absolutely. And I think also too, because they're entered into racing at such a young age, and there's so much with racing, and there's so much that comes into it, but they also are detached quite often, because they are individually stabled. Once they come in as a yearling, they don't get to be in that social environment that horses need for their welfare. So when we're getting them off the track, and they're having to learn to interact with other horses, even if it's just one other horse, and the whole avoidance of being touched, and that I find all off the track thoroughbreds tend to have that young sort of juvenile spirit to them. They're amazing. They're amazing equine athletes, and they're very sensitive, and they need to be approached. I mean, all horses are beautiful, and I think all horses are sensitive, but your off the track thoroughbreds, or your thoroughbred racehorses, being a hot-blooded breed, are just, yeah, they pick up on a lot. So I think you're going down the right path. You're fantastic. So all I would recommend, I don't think, I mean, the bum bands, they're not going to do any harm, and I think if anything they'll probably, you know, be complementary to your dressage training and things like that. Bringing it down to being really aware of, and this is going down to where I really love Manilo Mendez and that, sort of really being really tuned into their body and feeling their muscles. Like, I love it how, you know, you start to feel their neck change shape, and you start to feel their muscles sort of soften from that rock hard racehorse muscle that you have, and just having a look at him. So yeah, I'll put a link into some of the videos where just going back and leading him and just checking, do you feel like when he stops, is he sort of stopping heavy and you feel like the weight shifting on his front end? Because even though, guys, Chrissy, getting protective over their bones, even though it feel, oh, my heater's gone off. Even though they feel like they're not oh my God, that's a big thunderstorm. No, don't rain. Oh, sorry, I'm getting distracted here. I'm so over this rain. And this is a big learning. Like I said, I've brought Tommy into work now, so he's my 16-year-old, and how I retrained him, 7-8 years ago to, and I look at the issues I had with him, even though I wanted to get him to use his hind end behind him. He's a big 17-hand horse. I look back and I'm like, you know, I could feel he was tense and everything. So, oh, do you? Oh my God, it's all around the world. I'm so over this rain. And my dog's going to start shaking now. My little dog gets scared. I've got dogs everywhere here. And so the subtleness of it. So the Equitation Science Principles of going right back. And having them even stand there, it's like I've done, rambling on a bit here, but I've done, you can just go, so there's so much to go into with horse training and retraining, and it can get so subtle. But I've done body work myself with the Alexander technique and the Feldenkrais method. Now I think the bum bands are part also too, can be done with Feldenkrais, and I love the Alexander technique and Feldenkrais with horses. And checking them, and I've got a video I did yesterday of Tommy, of when he uses his hind end. Okay, one, you want the physical strength of him being able to use his hind end. Also, two, you want to make sure that he's not locked in front anywhere. So he's not locked. So when he uses his hind end, the energy has to come up from the hind over his back, but he has to be free in his shoulders, in his neck and everything for that energy to come through. Now, if there's a block in his front end, if he's blocked in his shoulders, he can't use his hind end. So it's very holistic, and it's really interesting. Why's my little, it's really interesting. Now this goes, it's called the, oh my gosh, it's, what's it called? It's part of Equitation Science. I'll put a link into it, but it's interesting how their forelegs, control their hind legs. Central pattern generator. Now this is interesting. I'm going to put a note here for this central pattern generator, because this is interesting. You've always thought, I'm going to put a link up with the central pattern generator. This was a big learning curve for me, because in our typical dressage, it's always in your mainstream dressage, it's like, drive them, get their hind end active and move them up. So just don't worry about the front, get their hind end active. But it's actually their front end, their front legs that control their hind end. And this is called the central pattern generator. Now, if we haven't trained them to turn properly with their front end, with their right foreleg and their left foreleg, so they're turning nice and softly and moving their shoulders, they can't use their hind end properly. And this was a big learning curve for me, because it's just, imagine if you're trying to get them to use their hind end, but there's some blockage somewhere in front, either their shoulders or they're locking in their jaw, even their poll in their jaw. Okay, so if they're locking in their jaw somewhere, they can't actually use their hind end. So it's very holistic. So looking at their body in a holistic way. So this is why I really like going back and just checking all your training responses of your stop and your go and your turn in hand first, and then under saddle, and then making sure that all those are light, and if any of those are locked or not light, that could be why he's not using his hind end correctly. So there's so much. So this goes back to retraining your basic responses. I've actually got a full video series I've done of this Ty, the client's horse I have here. So in the near future, I'm going to be having a video. I've got training coming up, starting right from day one all the way to where he is now. And even though where he is now, we keep getting set back because of this rain. It is bucketing down here. But yeah, look, I hope that makes sense to you. I know I've gone completely off the topic of bum bands, but yeah, I think you're fantastic. You're on the right path there. And all I would recommend is maybe incorporating the basic responses, Equitation Science Principles, and going back and just checking how he is with those basic responses to make sure there's there's nothing right back in his foundation training that could be preventing him from moving forward. See, because he's got pain off, obviously associations from his kissing spine, he may be blocking somewhere in front, in his shoulders or his jaw. Yeah, awesome. I hope that makes sense. I love videos, I'm a real video person. I'm, doing the whole online and learning platform is relatively new to me over the last year or so. So I love doing videos. It just takes me ages to edit them, but I've got videos that I will edit and upload to show you. And I'll start with all the basic responses because you obviously have an idea of the dressage sense. And so just demonstrating how to go back and check the basic responses. Massive change for me. Also too, I love Philippe, not everything, but a lot of Philippe Carl. Once again, classical dressage, and some of his techniques, which he gets the horse, makes sure they're soft in the jaw. So you want to make sure they're soft and giving in their jaw. Now that's a huge thing for off the track thoroughbreds because they're so locked, habituated to so much bit pressure. Now I know that because I've ridden racehorses for so long, and they just habituate to the bit pressure, but they lean and they habituate to all the jaw pressure. So it's on the bars of their mouth and the jaws. So they've used leaning into the bit and pressure on their jaw as a sense of balance as well. They use that to help balance themselves. So you're completely changing the way he is using his body, not only physically but also psychologically. So it takes time, and I think you're on definitely on the right path. So awesome. I hope that gives you some idea of where I'm coming at. What was I going to say about? Oh, yes, that's right. So I'll go back to Kristen. So there's, looking at with the pulling back, there's obviously some fear there. So fear of being brushed and, touched and things like that. So I've got videos on that as well, whereas one's called bonding with your off the track thoroughbreds. So and that's with Toppy. So just getting them used to being touched. I don't even brush Toppy. Okay. I've never done a full grooming session with him. He's only just literally coming into retraining now. So once again, I'll video his process as well because it's so good to see it in video, I think. And so I wouldn't even be worrying about trying to give her grooming sessions. Instead, I would be scratching her on so bonding with your off the track thoroughbred and getting her to associate you with a positive experience. I think I did a video on that as well. I've got heaps of YouTube videos that are going to be coming up and a few already. So I would be teaching her, Kristen, and also the same thing with Laurie and your boy, doing the stop and go in hand lightly, and then bonding with your horse. So don't worry about the grooming so much, but teaching them to associate you as a positive experience, having a scratch on the wither, social, because they're socially deprived. Basically, off the track thoroughbreds come out of the racing industry. Thoroughbred racehorses are socially deprived. Okay, they have quite often what they call detachment. Now, detachment can come in humans as well. So they've sort of detached. They have this aversiveness to being touched, and horses need social interaction and tactile interaction so much. And thoroughbred racehorses miss that, and they are, because they go into the racing industry at such a young age, they don't have that, and it creates a bit of a detachment, and that's why quite often they'll be cranky. They'll put their ears back when you want to rug them. It's a lot of it is detachment. In saying that, you also want to eliminate any physical reasons, which is ulcer pain, just pain. Tight muscles are painful, lock tight muscles. So once again, the whole holistic approach, and that's the type of approach that I use just with off the track thoroughbred retraining. So you sort of have to really go more into your sort of right brain of observing and a bit of a detective type of attitude. Okay, what's happening here? Eliminate any pain reasons and approach it from multiple different angles. So hope that helps. No more questions, so I'll leave it there. Let me know in the comments below if any of that made sense, if you have any more questions about it. Once again, a big welcome to all our new members in the group. It's lovely having you in the group, you and your beautiful off the track thoroughbreds. Post anytime. I'll do a welcome post for our new members. So post anytime. If you haven't already, download there's a free ebook I have up in the announcements sections. So what that will do is it'll give you a free ebook, just getting you started on some handy tips to know when first getting off the track thoroughbred. And also too, that puts you on my email list. So if you're on my email list, you get the newsletter. I'm going to be changing that now to a weekly newsletter, so you get up to date with everything that's happening, any new trainings and courses that are coming out. And also too, I've got a monthly membership program that I've recently launched, and that's going to be reopening again. A lot more is going to be happening with that, so you get up to date with everything. Facebook is doing some new, they're doing some new changes. So I've actually got another, this is the monthly subscription program. It's going to be very cheap, and lots and lots of value, and a new platform of Facebook, which is going to be awesome. So I highly recommend you downloading the Off the Track Thoroughbred starter kit and getting on my email list, because if Facebook does any weird things, which it tends to be doing at the moment because they've changed it over to Meta or something, you'll still receive all the information, and we'll still be connected. So yeah, I'll leave it there. So I wish everybody a lovely day, and I'm all up now with my new Wi-Fi, so all that is good, and I will see you in the group, and I will see you also next Sunday for our Q&A. So have a lovely day. Bye.